Good morning to friends from Canada, Caribbean, and the UK. Good day, Africa, Asia. Good evening, Australia and New Zealand. Greetings from India. Indeed, it's a privilege to have among us a world-renowned technology entrepreneur, Nandan Nilekani. He is the co-founder and chairman of Infosys Technologies, an IT giant employing over 260,000 people across the globe. He's truly a thought leader. He has been on the Time magazine's top 100 influencers twice and named Asia Businessman of the Year by Forbes and Fortune. He was the founding chairman of the Unique ID Authority of India in the rank of a cabinet minister in the government of India. Nandan supports startups and social initiatives. Recently, he co-founded and is the chairman of Ek Step, a not-for-profit effort to create a learner-centric technology-based platform to improve basic literacy and numeracy among millions of children. Nandan is also an author of Imagining India. He has co-authored a book with Viral Shah, Rebooting India, Realizing a Billion Aspirations. And just recently, he's released his third book, which is co-authored with Tanuj Bhojwani, interestingly titled The Art of Bitfulness, Keeping Calm in a Digital Era, something that I think all of us need to do. So Nandan, a warm welcome to you on behalf of the alumni and friends of CSC who have joined us from over 20 plus nations.
Thank you very much, Balaji, and it's a pleasure and privilege to be part of this gathering.
Thank you, Nandan. Maybe we should just start with your recent book, a short preview on the art of bitfulness, which I'm sure will be of huge value to all of us.
Well, this book came out of the pandemic and my walks I had with my co-author, Tanuj Bhojwani, and we realized that our lives are becoming even more digitally dependent. And we realized that we cannot get away from technology, but is there a way to use technology better, harness it for our benefit, harness it in a way that we feel empowered and we use it in an effective way. And that's what the art of bitfulness is about, how to use technology better and be calm. And being calm then allows you to be productive. And that's what the book is about, Balaji.
Thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of us are going to be grabbing a copy of that soon. Nandan, there's a lot of excitement around the talk today. And actually, we have several alumni who've already sent us questions, and some more friends of CSC have sent us questions too. Just to give an illustration, we have Robert Goh from Solomon Islands, Peter Lauren from Australia, Hannah Wong from Malaysia, John Thompson from UK, Ian and Agnes from Canada, Gaurav, Aruna from India, and many, many more. Actually, it makes my job easy because all I have to do is to pose those questions to you. But before I do that, a quick request to the participants. If you have any questions that you want to ask of Nandan during this interaction, please post them in the Q&A box, and we will try to get as many of them answered in the time that we have available with us. Okay, Nandan, so we get started. There are a lot of questions that people have been asking about, your leadership journey. You were the co-founder of Infosys in 1981, and today you're the chairman of a global company with revenues of about $14 billion. Can you share with us a little bit about this amazing journey?
Thanks, Balaji. Well, I've actually had a very, unusual career in that sense. You're right. I am a co-founder of Infosys, which began under the leadership of Mr. Narayan Murthy in 1981. It was India's original startup. And today it's a company with a market cap of $100 billion. As you said, it's a very large company and world-renowned. But I also had another opportunity, which was in 2009. I was invited by then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh to lead a very large project in the government, which led to the Aadhaar biometric ID for 1.3 billion people. So I had this opportunity to be both in the private sector as a founding member of a great company and currently the chairman, and having worked in the public sector in the government to do a large complex project. So this actually has given me opportunity to do a variety of things in very different environments.
I think that's what makes you very an exciting person to talk to as well. But we'll come to your stint in the government in a bit. There's a question that's come up. What role did you see Infosys play in the technology industry? As you said, it was a startup in those early days. And has it changed dramatically now?
Well, I think if you look back in the beginnings of Infosys in some sense was the original startup in India. At the time of Infosys founding in 1981, business was dominated by large private sector family firms or by government-owned companies or by multinationals. And the idea that a bunch of people who are from next door could create a company was unknown to everybody. And in that sense, I think our success and our sort of role model became a role model for many other startups. And today we have seen a huge startup boom. Today, I think Infosys plays an equally important role because the world is going through massive digital transformation. This has got accelerated through the pandemic, and now companies, governments, institutions around the world are coming to terms with how to become digitally agile and transformational. And therefore, I think Infosys is playing a very critical role across the world in helping companies in this transformation. So it's been a great journey, and I really am delighted to have been part of it.
Lovely, Nandan. An interesting question. You're in a sector that feeds on technology-led disruption. So how do you personally handle that stress? And also, how do you prepare your organization to deal with such disruption?
Well, as I said, my book, Part of Bitfulness, is about how to deal with the stress of technology, how to not let it consume you, but how to use it in a way that you affect your goals and you get to do what you want to do. I think businesses have to become simply much more agile and much more dynamic. I think we are living in a fast-changing world. I've been in this industry for 40 years, and I've seen every technology transformation from mainframes to mini computers to PCs to internet to, now people talk about metaverse and crypto and AI. So there's a lot of 4G, 5G. So there's a lot of stuff happening all the time. And you need to always be open to change. You need to understand what's going on. You also need to separate the real stuff from the hype, because there's also a lot of hype in many of these things. And I think companies have to be on the ball. So a lot of it is, how do you architect a firm to be agile? How do you create internal digital platforms so companies can respond to external stimuli quickly, be able to change very rapidly? Because I think strategy is not about whether we do A or B. Strategy now is, can we do A or B based upon what happens?
Brilliant. And does that mean that you have to layer your leadership to be prepared and be agile?
Oh, absolutely. I think leadership and leadership readiness for this is very important. At Infosys, we have been investing hugely in leadership. We have something called the Infosys Leadership Institute, which was set up 20 years back. And we have specific programs to help our leaders to deal with change, to deal with leadership challenges, to deal with adversity, and so on. And I think the investment we have made in leadership is a critical component of our success.
Absolutely. It's visible in the results and the respect that you as an organization earned. So Nandan, you have 260,000 people across the world. I mean, that's a huge number by any stretch of imagination. And you have also thousands of clients across the globe. And the world came to a shuddering halt in March 2020. How did you and your leaders, lead Infosys in that situation? And are there any learnings that you think would be relevant for our audience today?
Well, I think March 2020 was definitely an extremely stressful time for everybody, not just for us, for every company, every individual, every society. And we had to deal with lockdowns across the world. And our customers expected us to continue to deliver and do what we had to do because we were doing mission critical systems for them around the world. And there we were very fortunate that at Infosys, our leadership team under Salil Parekh, our CEO, and Praveen Rao, who was then the COO, had already invested in creating a digital infrastructure where you could work from anytime, anywhere. So within a matter of 2 to 3 weeks, they were able to ensure that everybody could work from home. And the digital infrastructure was secure enough. Everybody had a desktop or a laptop, and they could log on. They had to get policies changed. They had to get customers' permission. All that had to be done in a very quick time. But in a matter of weeks, Infosys was able to transform and work from home. And which effectively, we continue to do that 2 years hence. Because every time we want to look at opening up, then you have a new variant and so on. So I think we learned a lot about remote work. We learned a lot about remote collaboration. We learned a lot about how do we motivate employees whom you haven't met for months. And I think it's been a tremendous experience and has shown the resilience that the company has. But I think we're all equally looking forward to the next few months when hopefully we'll all be able to go to office more often.
Absolutely, Nandan. I think, I guess you had global clients and hundreds of thousands of people to deal with. We had our own little challenges in telecoms. So we had our network warriors that are out there keeping the the engines of economy and people and society running too. So yeah, it's been a massive, massive learning, as you rightly said, and hopefully we'll get back to a little bit more normal way of working. But do you think we'll ever go back to the old ways, or is it forever change in your mind?
No, I think it's changed forever in the sense that I think all of us have had this massive behavior change in our ability to work remotely, our ability to do meetings over video and so on. So I think we'll find some kind of equilibrium where, of course, I'm a big believer that we should go to the office often, meeting other people, just building the social capital, building the networks. This is very important. And we cannot, I don't think we can do this fully remotely. At the same time, we should give people flexibility. Maybe a couple of days a week, they can work from home, or they can, we can choose to, I don't know the exact steady state model that will emerge post the pandemic, and it'll be different for different organizations. But I think it'll have to be some kind of an hybrid model where you do meet clients, go to office, meet employees. At the same time, you can do more things from home or remotely than you could have before the pandemic.
So makes a lot of sense. Hybrid is the new mantra, actually. Just changing gears and moving to your stint in government, which you spoke about in your opening comments. Now, that was an amazing step. In 2009, you were running a very successful business and a respected organization, and you chose to leave Infosys and take the role of chairman of UID, the Unique ID Authority of India, a cabinet rank position, no doubt. And you were actually invited by the then Prime Minister of the country. So what was it that drew you to taking this role?
Well, I've always been inspired by public service. I've always felt that I should do something in public service. I had a very successful run as the CEO of Infosys. I was at that time in my early 50s, and I thought I could do something transformational for the country. And I was very fortunate that then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh invited me to do this project. And I felt this was something I could do. And it was actually a very big change for me, Balaji. I was, at a nice corner office overlooking a golf course, and I gave all that up. I moved from Bangalore to Delhi. I moved from a company with a few 100,000 people to a startup inside the government. I didn't even have an office of my own. I had a small room which the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, Montek, had given us. And I had to assemble a team of talent. So it was quite an uphill task. But we took it as a challenge. And what I learned in life is that if you set yourself some bold, ambitious goals, then that itself attracts people, because people out there want to make a difference to society. People out there are looking for a chance to be part of something huge. So I was able to attract a phenomenal set of people, both from within the government as well as from outside. And we were able to blend this very diverse crowd into an organization that focused single-mindedly on ensuring that we give an ID to every Indian. And by the time I resigned from the government 5 years later, 600 million people had been issued the ID, and subsequently the new government came. The new government under Prime Minister Modi was equally enthused by this project. And today 1.3 billion people have the ID. They do 50 million authentications a day. They do 5 million KYCs a day to open bank accounts and to get mobile connections. And I think we have transformed the country with technology.
And then absolutely, I totally agree with you. I've had the fortune of having interacted with you in those days as well. And the infectious energy that you had, I think, rubbed off on your team that you kind of attracted. I think in India, we are very familiar with what the biometric identity has done for the country. But as I mentioned, there are colleagues that have joined, friends have joined from 20 other countries. Maybe if you could just give some illustrations on how common citizens, what changed really in their life before Aadhaar came in and after.
Sure, Balaji. I think we have to realize that often in many countries, including India, everybody does not have a birth certificate. In fact, there were some states in India where more than half the births people didn't have birth certificate, and that was fine in the days when you lived your entire life in the same village. But as societies became more mobile and migrational, having an ID was very important. And we had to go back and make sure everybody had some kind of an ID. It had to be, and we said if we're doing an ID in the 21st century, we should do a digital ID, which can be verified online. So this is an ID that says John is John, and you can verify that John is John online over the mobile network using a biometric device like a fingerprint reader or a iris scanner or even a face recognition method, face authentication method. So this is something which is very useful because this is nationally applicable. So a young man in Bihar can get his Aadhaar ID, and then when he comes to the city and tries to apply for a job, he can show his ID and the person offering the job can verify the ID online. Or if you want to withdraw money in a village, we have a device by which you can authenticate yourself using the ID, and the neighborhood business correspondent can give you money from his account. And that system alone does 100 million transactions a month with about 3 to 4 billion US dollars a month that is withdrawn using this method. So this having an ID is very important, and having a digital ID particularly became useful in the pandemic, because now without meeting somebody, you could verify your ID. And we also had the ID as a basis for a cash transfer initiative. So India runs the world's largest direct benefit transfer system. And during the pandemic, again, it has been hugely effective because the government can transfer money in a matter of, almost in real time into the bank accounts of people with IDs. So this is all this has helped in a dramatic way, especially after the pandemic.
I think, Nandan, you also made sure that the middlemen that probably ate a lot of the direct beneficiary transfers also got eliminated, right, at the bargain.
Yes, the whole thing was that once I can transfer money electronically into somebody's bank account in real time, then essentially there is no middleman. The money goes direct. So and the person can go to any BC in the country and withdraw money. So nobody can control their lives. And therefore, the empowerment that it has got, the reduction in corruption, the efficiency it has brought into the system has been huge.
Fantastic, Nandan. You touched upon it a little bit about, moving from a totally unregulated industry like IT to bureaucracy. Was there a lot of adjustment that you needed to, in your leadership style, to take people along? I mean, it's so much tougher, right? When you
Well, it's definitely much more complex in the public space, because in the private space, at the end of the day, you are running an organization. The organization has business goals. The organization wants to, increase revenues, make profits, reduce costs, increase earnings per share, and all that stuff. But in the government, there's no one definition of success. So you have to be clear about what success is. Success to one may be a failure to the other guy. Second thing is that it's a lot of actors in a public space, right? You have government employees, you have bureaucrats, you have politicians, you have activists, you have journalists, you have judges, lawyers, you have companies. Everybody has a stake in the game. And therefore, coming out with a strategy which allowed everyone to be aligned, so they all put their weight behind this, and making sure that there was no negative coalition against you, and making sure that you carried everybody together. The consensus building in the public space is order of magnitude higher than in the private space. So a lot of my time actually was spent in consensus building and getting people aligned. And I was very fortunate that I had Ram Sevak Sharma, who later on you know as chairman of TRAI and currently the CEO of the National Health Authority. He was my CEO. So he actually ran the project, and I focused on aligning all stakeholders.
Brilliant. It was a partnership that actually worked wonders for the project, and more important for the nation as a whole. So absolutely. You chose then, of course, to return to Infosys. So what prompted the return to business?
Well, actually, it was not directly there. I completed my term in 2014. I had committed that we would reach 600 million people. I did that, and I stepped down. And then I was actually like a private citizen. I was doing a few investments. I set up Step to address education transformation. I became an advisor to NPCI, where we developed the UPI Payment Platform, which is another great digital platform of India.
You must hear something about that also, Nandan, because that's transformed as well.
Yeah, so the payment platform was essentially state-of-the-art, any real-time payment platform designed totally with an open source stack. And it was rolled out in May of 2016. And then in October 2016, it was doing about 100,000 transactions a month. And then India had its demonetization of certain currency notes, which led to a big adoption of digital by the government. And then again, the pandemic led to the rise of digital payments. So today that system does about 4.5 billion transactions a month. It's probably the fastest growing payment system in the world. And it's very heartening for me when I go for a walk, the vegetable cart vendor takes digital payments using Google Pay or Phone Pay or whatever. So I think it's quite, it's also been transformational in India. So anyway, I was doing all that. And then in 2017, Infosys went through a bit of a leadership challenge. The CEO quit and so on. And I was, I guess I was the only guy everybody was okay with. So I was sort of persuaded to go back to Infosys. And so at that time, actually, I had sort of said my private career is over. I'll only do public work. But the Infosys situation was such that, I went back, and I'm really happy I went back. I went back as the chairman, and we reconstituted the board. We got a new CEO, an excellent gentleman, Mr. Salil Parekh. We brought in huge strategic changes. We brought growth back to the company. We brought the digital transformation. So I'm very happy that in the 4 years that I've been back at Infosys, that it's been able to really come out and become the bellwether again in the industry.
Nandan, for the candor, because there was, I think you've in a way spoken about your role in driving corporate governance. I suspect that has been a significant part of your journey as a chair, right? If I may.
Yes, I mean, I think the important thing is we have a very high quality board today. We are a united board. The board is fully backing the management. The strategy of the company is articulated by the management, endorsed by the board. So I think a lot of stuff, which very simple things that I've done. Again, it's about being calm.
Thanks. That's very useful. Nandan, today, of course, as you know, the theme that we chose for the interaction was technology for good. So clearly, that's an area, there's a lot of questions that we've received around on that topic itself, and also on the role of leaders in that dimension. So maybe I'll start with some interesting ones. There's one which says, you have 24 hours in a day and infinite demands on your time. So as a corporate leader, how do you choose to allocate your time between customers, employees, shareholders, and community?
Well, first of all, I must tell you that I'm very ruthless with my time. I'm very, very time efficient. I believe that time is the one scarce resource in my life. So I'm very careful about what I take up, I do believe customers, of course, I never turn down. For me, meeting a customer is a way for me to check the usefulness of what we do, as well as every customer meeting I've had, have learned something new from that. So customers is important. Employees is very important. I do participate in some investor calls, but that's largely done by the management team. Of course, I play a big role in articulating the role of Infosys in society. Infosys is actually a leader in, for example, sustainability. It went carbon neutral in 2020, 30 years ahead of the Paris deadline. And now we have ESG goals for 2030, which are extremely ambitious. So yes, I do play a role in that. And also do a lot of things outside of Infosys, because I'm a non-executive chair. So it doesn't really take up that much of my time. So I help again on new projects in India, like the Open Network for Digital Commerce, the education stuff through Step. So I have a number of things, other things that I work on, which continue to be, though I'm no longer in the government, I do help in these large-scale, population-scale transformations.
Lovely. I'm glad you used that word, because I was just about to say, you introduced new terms like data-rich India, population scale impact, and now bitfulness for that matter. And you obviously passionately argued about the role of IT and technology in solving large societal problems. You gave a couple of examples already. The question is, how do leaders of large digital companies, and even for that matter, government, ensure that the march of technology doesn't widen the digital divide and that truly technology can be a force for good?
I think that's a very important question, Balaji. I think as our lives have become more digitally dependent, and the pandemic showed that we did everything. We did our commerce, our food, our education, our entertainment, our relationships, all digitally. Not having access to technology is very important. India has, of course, been fortunate that it's done a tremendous job thanks to all the great mobile companies we have, where connectivity has become ubiquitous in the last 10 years. Device prices are falling, but that's not enough. We have to make sure that everyone has access to a device, either in their own or as part of a shared device, which can work in a village and stuff like that. And then I think governments and companies have to focus on technology that will actually make a difference to people's lives. How can we use this to improve their healthcare? How can we use this to improve their skills? How can we use this to improve the quality of the learning? And I think that's very important, because often if technology is just used to just aimlessly watch videos and all that, then it may not really get to where we want. And in fact, what we talk about in our art for bitfulness is precisely that. How do we structure technology in a way that it is equitable, that it is inclusive, that it does not create winner-take-all models, but allows competition to flourish and so on?
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that helps clarify. One other important dimension, there's a lot of cynicism and also mistrust of big tech. There's talk about unintended consequences of looking at multiple data sets, all population scale, and therefore the unintended consequences coming from such interaction or use or otherwise. How can business leaders and how can government actually address such misgivings?
Well, I think these are definitely concerns. One is, of course, in architecting the system to ensure that it is competitive. For example, if you look at the payment revolution in India through UPI, it's designed in a way that banks participate and banks provide the robustness of the regulatory support oversight. At the same time, it allows different consumer-facing apps to participate. So we have PhonePe, Paytm, WhatsApp, Google, everybody participating. There's no one dominant player, they're all competing. So I think, and customers can choose, customers are interoperable and portable. So part of it is, how do we ensure tech is much, you see it in the mobile revolution, right? I can change my mobile number and put another provider if I'm not, and so on. So I think creating interoperable, portable systems is very important. And often the thing that happens in the digital world is you get walled gardens. You end up sort of being captive in a system. And therefore, there's a big role of government and public policy to do that. So I think there are moves afoot now across the world to address these concerns. But my work has actually been really how to use tech for social benefits. So I've always felt that it's about how do we use it for its transformational capability. How do you do it at scale? So how do you get 1 billion people to use it? Because my view is that there's a small delta improvement for one person multiplied by 1 billion people, that's a huge societal improvement. So it's all about small change at population scale.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to jump now to some more real-time questions. Actually, the chat box is full of them. I requested John to help us a little bit with sifting through the questions. There's one question which has come from Andrew Larpent. He's the chairman of Commonwealth Association for the Aging. And his question is, as the speed of technological innovation accelerates, how do we ensure that those sections of civil society, particularly the elderly, are not left further behind and marginalized in the digital world?
No, I think that's a great question. And I think we obviously have to make technology even more simpler to use. In one sense, I think the pandemic accelerated even the older people to use technology. And today, grandmothers talk to the children over video because that's the only way they can talk to the grandchildren because they're in 2 different cities. So I think also it's about enabling better interfaces, better UI, better voice recognition and all those things. So I think we have to work very hard to make it more and more accessible to older people.
Thanks, Nandan. Another interesting question from Peter Moore. In this fast-changing digital environment that you've described, what should the role of governments be in supporting the digital economy?
Well, the government has a huge role in enabling the digital economy, and that is partly, of course, one is creating the policy framework to enable many companies to participate in the market and produce the goods and services, have clear competition rules, so there's competition and innovation all the time, and wherever required, produce the digital public goods that enables others to participate. And I think in that sense, India has been a leader. So whether it's with the Aadhaar platform, the UPI platform, the account aggregator platform, which allows people to use their data to get better credit and so on, many other examples of that. Some part of this public infrastructure has to be done by government, but it must be designed in a way which is open enough to allow private companies to build on top of that. So finding the balance between what should be in the government space, what should be in the market space, that's very, very important.
And I suspect that's also evolving all the time, depending upon the situation.
That's right.
There's a question from Alpana Kera. With technology touching all parts of our lives, how do we see the status of cybersecurity measures, and are we doing enough as a society or as a nation?
Well, I think cybersecurity is really going to be one of the challenges of our times, because in some sense, we have accelerated making our systems open to the public. We have accelerated putting our systems on the internet for anyone to use. And that has obviously encouraged a lot of bad actors, both state and non-state, to take advantage of that. And we are around the world, I think it's the very huge concern for firms and for governments. And I don't think we can rest on this, because every time we fix one particular loophole, then somebody else opens another window of attack. So I think this is an ongoing thing, and I agree completely that this should be a very, very high priority, because if we don't do that, then this whole thing will really have a huge backlash.
Makes a lot of sense, Nandan. There's a question from Harish Natarajan. One undesirable downstream effect of work from home and hybrid offices is unemployment, especially in the unorganized sector, the messengers, the runners, office support staff, etc. Do you have any thoughts on how this segment can be reskilled to become more productive?
Well, I think hopefully once we get back to some kind of post-pandemic equilibrium, and as people go back to work, there'll be more of these proximity jobs which are currently being devastated, whether it's in the office or in a restaurant or in travel. So I think that's something, but I think skilling is very important. In fact, I'm involved with some skilling initiatives in India. And the idea is, how do we create platforms for upskilling people? How do we make sure that people are issued credentials saying that they have the necessary skills which can be verified? And then how do employers discover the people who have skills so that you can give them jobs? So I think a lot of them is building these ecosystems that reduce the friction and improve discovery, trust, and so on. And that's some of the stuff actually which is going on right now.
Makes a lot of sense, Nandan. And I suspect some of the business models of hyper-local delivery and so on might end up its own.
In fact, I know you're aware of this new initiative called ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. And the idea is that we create an interoperable commerce network so everyone can participate. So if I want to buy something, I go put up my request, and maybe the neighborhood store can say, I have that in stock and I can deliver that to you in 10 minutes. And so I think, how do we make e-commerce more participative? So that's also one of the big initiatives today in India.
Brilliant. There's a question from David McCready in Australia. Where do you see the role of digitalization of processes impacting the role and opportunity for work for less skilled workers? I suspect it's a bit of similar question that you answered. And you're saying it's everybody's responsibility, although private sector can play a big role in.
No, I think again the government can create the skilling ecosystem. How make sure that enough skilling organizations are there, make sure there's enough content. There's a testing system. There's a way to issue credentials. All that the government has to create an ecosystem. But finally, markets have to operate, because markets only can predict quickly what are the needs of the demand of the market. So I mean, like, skill demands are going to change. Because we are entering a world of continuous learning. So we'll have to keep getting people reskilled and learning all the time to keep up to date.
Makes sense. There's a question from Michael Wright. What role do you see technology playing in improving mental health?
No, I think this is a terrific question. I think one of the things we have seen as a consequence of the pandemic has been the increase in stress in people, and mental health has become a big challenge. And the fact that we have had to endure this pandemic and its multiple variants for 2 years has been unprecedented in the stress it has caused people, and especially young people have got extremely affected by that. I think there is work happening on using tech for mental health. But I think we still have to see how that works out. In fact, I know that people saw in the Indian budget yesterday, they announced that they would implement mental telehealth from Bangalore in multiple locations. So I think it's early days yet. I've still not seen anything which gives me complete confidence that we can do this just through telehealth.
Got it. There's a question from Ashley Barrett in Germany. It's often said that tech enables humans the ability to build at scale. Do you have any observation on how to scale, which would be applicable to us as a group of, in this case, CSC leaders, but it could be equally other global organizations? How do you scale leaders, so to say, that leadership movement?
No, I think it's a great question. I think the most challenging thing is actually scaling up leadership, because if you're able to scale up leaders, then you're really creating infinite capacity. And I think, but I think the fact that we have organizations like CSC, which bring people together with a sense of shared mission and purpose, they can in fact take up leadership programs or development programs to ensure more people have leadership skills. So I think absolutely, in a world where we are seeing more fractured behavior, more polarization, I think organizations that come together globally to create leaders who can change society is so critical.
That's a great advice that you're giving, Nandan. For some of the folks that are friends of CSC, I'll just mention the purpose of the original Commonwealth study conferences, which were held in 1956. And it was about investigating the tensions, problems, and opportunities created by the interplay of industrial enterprise on one end and community development. There's always that dimension. And it also provided opportunity for future leaders from business, government, labor, and civil society to engage in dialogue. And it's only through that process that you spoke about consensus that you then help them refine their own worldview and leadership styles. So I guess there are a couple of questions that have come up relating to this whole idea, that what role do international organizations of various kinds, I mean, Commonwealth is just one, but there could be many others, and their leaders, what role can they play which is constructive in terms of creating sustainable communities?
No, I think they have a very important role. I think we are living in a world where geopolitical tensions are rising, and people are at odds in many societies themselves have got polarized and so on. So I think the fact that organizations, CSC and many others that bring global leaders together, I think they have a huge role to play to carve out some kind of a common minimum agenda of change and then implement that in the respective countries, and just use the sheer sort of bonding among themselves to bring change, because change happens through human beings working together.
That makes a lot of sense, Nandan. There's another question. It's around, can digital technology really help in fighting challenges around climate and sustainability? It seems very high on the agenda of nations and society at large. And there's another question which I'll leave for.
No, I think absolutely. I mean, for example, as I mentioned, Infosys has reached carbon neutrality. Part of that is because we have done dramatic reduction in consumption of energy in our campuses. We are recycling water. We are using renewable power. More than half our power is from a solar plant, which we have built ourselves. Our buildings are designed for natural lighting, so they use much lighting. So all this requires technology, sensors. Infosys has 47 million square feet of office space run centrally through being able to understand what's happening So there's a whole role of technology in making our systems more efficient. There's a role of technology in establishing provenance. As we go towards more organic, more fair trade and so on, we need to make sure that everything that we consume, we know where it's coming from. And that, again, technology has a big role. And then finally, we have a big role in creating a circular economy because we want to be able to recycle things, reuse things, and so on. So I think technology has a big role in the environment, in the whole sustainability drive.
I love what you spoke about the circular economy. I think that is a critical piece apart from many other things that you mentioned. There's a question around digital transformation. Can it democratize healthcare, particularly post-pandemic? Because the challenges of health have only been amplified now, and it's probably going to be like this for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. I think healthcare can be transformed with technology. Some of the work going on in India is towards that. It's about how do we create a platform for multiple online teleconsultation providers. How do we create electronic health records which are portable? So I can go to one hospital, get something done, then I can go to my second opinion, I can carry my record with me. So having portable health records is very important. How do we upskill health providers to make sure that the frontline workers in health have the right skills to be able to provide services? So I think there's a lot of role for tech in providing high volume, low cost healthcare.
Thank you so much, Nandan. There's a question from Tyrone Naidu. To what extent has technology contributed to the polarization we are seeing in the world with the emergence of social media, etc.?
No, definitely, I think some of the challenges have been led social. I think social media has had a couple of implications. One is the decline of local media, in the sense that, if you across the world, there was a very, very active local media, local newspapers in small communities, which acted as the bonding of those communities. But with the loss of advertising income, all these publications shut down, and therefore we had a vacuum. And second, because of the nature of social media, which is to encourage engagement, and engagement happens by creating more polarizing information, I think definitely it has had its impact. And by the way, it's there in our book about how to deal with it at an individual level.
One more reason, Nandan, for us to go through that book, for sure. Nandan, there's a question around this whole AR, VR part, and I'll just probably have a couple of questions now because I know you have scheduled to keep as well. It's talking about Meta is investing $10 billion in Facebook Reality Lab. The whole thing about Web 3.0. You mentioned about Infosys as an organization, or even your customers on the cutting edge of technology. So do you see some of this already being adopted, and do you think that's the next evolution that leaders are to prepare for? Because the larger question coming from that, how do leaders stay on top of the technology curve, whether they are in technology industry like you are, or they are in client organizations or customer facing roles?
Well, some of these things are much more longer term in nature, and we need to be able to separate the signal from the noise, as they say. There's a lot of noise in these things, and yes, there's a lot of work going on in augmented reality, virtual reality. You have all these new kinds of goggles and so on. You have people playing games and creating avatars and buying things in some metaverse. But these are all, I think, still they're going to come, but we have to see what role they have. Finally, I think I always go back to questions: how is this technology going to improve the lives of people? Is this going to help them become better educated, make them healthier, make them calmer, make them perform the job better? So that's the prism through which I look at these technologies. If they're able to do that, great. Otherwise, they're just one more thing out there.
Right. Makes sense. Separate the hype from the reality and also focus on what can transform lives. Brilliant. A question from Ilka Dunn from South Africa. The role of technology in building well-being economies and helping us thrive. It strikes me sometimes that technology, while capable of good, has created even greater divides between the haves and the have-nots.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, my whole argument is that as a believer in technology for good, we have to make sure that we actively support that part of the technology which allows good things to happen, and highlight the challenges we face with some of the technologies and the way they're being used, which have caused polarization, fake news, or social disharmony. So I think it's not, you have to think of both, and our job as leaders is to use the best of what is possible, at the same time reduce the negative impact of what is bad.
Wonderful, Nandan. Nandan, I'm finally coming to the segment that we call rapid fire. This is something that we've done with all the leaders in this leadership series. I'll just say a word and, please do respond with what, a short sentence or a couple of words. Leadership.
I think it should be inspirational. That's the ultimate thing.
Brilliant. Business.
Business should be a force for good.
Superb. Technology, I guess you've already answered. Technology for good, I think.
And transformation, yeah.
And transformation. Government.
Enabler, enabling people and societies to improve their lives.
Wonderful. Opportunity.
Should be equitable and unlimited.
Outstanding. Education.
Lifelong.
Brilliant. Ambition. This is a tricky one.
It has to be shared. I think ambition is not about one person, but about a shared ambition.
Superb. Thank you so much. I think these answers give us a glimpse of your thought process, your value system, and so on. Really, thank you for this candor.
Thank you.
We are reaching the last 8 to 10 minutes of this particular interaction. John, is there anything else that you picked up as pressing questions that we need to ask from the audience? Okay, there's one. There's from already. Yeah, there are a couple of last ones which have come. There's one which says from David McCready himself. Do you think India can find a way to lead places like WTO in the future?
I'm sorry?
Do you think India can find a way to lead places like WTO in the future? The World Trade Organization.
Sure. I think India has a stake in a global fair and free trading system. So definitely it can play a role in the WTO.
Brilliant. Would you say the challenges and solutions are similar for all countries in the Commonwealth, or are there distinction to be made for differences in economic resources? If so, what would you suggest focus should be on?
Well, obviously they're different because the scale, size and scale, the population, the level of economic development, the level of diversity in these societies, they're all very different. And I think we'll have to figure out, each country will, or each region will have to figure out for themselves. But I think there's a lot of common learning that we can have, and groups like CSC can sort of share those learnings and carry them to each other.
Thank you so much, Nandan. And one last question before I ask for the vote of thanks to propose. Question around diversity. And this was something that Hannah had raised from Malaysia about how can leaders actually drive diversity, and particularly in the STEM area, because there seems to be a disproportionate lack of diversity in that space.
No, I think we have to consciously work on this. I think we tend to select people or work with people who are like us and feel comfortable with. And I think we have to make a conscious effort to have diversity. And I frankly find that diversity improves the quality of decision making. It brings in new thoughts, new ideas, new experiences. And for certainly at Infosys, as part of our ESG, diversity is a huge push that we are doing.
Thank you so much, Nandan. Really, thanks for your valuable time and your insights. And it's actually inspirational. I've always found interacting with you fascinating, because I always learn a new dimension from you all the time. So I see the comments from the team on the chat, and that's again reflecting that same sentiment. Before I call upon Michael Wright, who's the president of CSC Global Alumni, to propose a vote of thanks, I'd just like to call upon Ian Anderson. He's the chief organizer of the Commonwealth Study Conference 2023 that's being hosted by Canada. And he'll share a short perspective and a video, 3-minute video, on the wonderful leadership conference opportunity that's coming up next year. Ian, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Balaji, and namaste, everyone. Nandan, that was a truly inspirational discussion. I got to tell you, there's not many things that would get me up at 5 a.m. in Canada, but you are definitely at the top of my list now.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm, as Balaji mentioned, I'm chair of the organizing committee for the 11th Duke of Edinburgh's Commonwealth Study Conference, as we call it, CSC 2023. In June 2023, we're welcoming 300 promising young leaders in Canada from around the Commonwealth. It's a 2-week program that really will be the development experience of a lifetime. I'm pleased to introduce this brief video that will describe the conference opportunity and introduce our president, Her Royal Highness Princess Anne, and our chair, BMO Financial Group CEO, Darrell White. The application process for the conference actually opens in just 6 weeks, March 14th. It will stay open for 5 months, so there's lots of opportunity. Please spread the word to anyone you know who you think might benefit from this amazing opportunity. So thank you for watching this video, and please visit the website for information. And John, over to you to run the video.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think if you can just turn the video on, Gagan.
In June 2023, 300 young leaders from across the Commonwealth will meet in Canada. For 2 weeks, they'll work together in study groups. They'll tour the country, meet with leaders in government, business, labor, and community service. Their goal to report as a team on engaged leadership for inclusive change.
Attending this program is worth every ounce of effort and sacrifice that you may have to make in order to join.
You're going to meet leaders who are going to inspire you to even greater heights, and you're already a fantastic leader.
The people you'll meet, places you'll go, the access you'll get to things, it will fundamentally change your thinking.
This conference will determine the type of leader you will be.
It was called The Great Experiment by its founder, the Duke of Edinburgh. Young leaders in business, government, labor, and the community sector from across the Commonwealth gathered in Oxford in 1956 to work, travel, debate, and engage with each other.
The whole success of the conference depends not on what you decide, but what you talk about, and the opinions, however provocative, which are aired.
It was such a success, it was followed by many more global and regional conferences. And now Canada will host Commonwealth Study Conference 2023 under the leadership of Her Royal Highness Princess Anne and Chair Darrell White, CEO of BMO Financial Group. Working together in study groups, participants will explore what engaged leadership for inclusive change means to them.
16 team members from 12 countries. This can happen only in CSC.
Having emerging leaders representing business, representing NGOs, unions, really does create a mixture of very diverse people.
The core lesson was just the importance of listening and learning and acknowledging and entertaining different points of view.
Conference participants will have Canada, the world's second largest country, as their classroom.
You'll have the opportunity to meet, share experiences, and network with high-level leaders of industry, business, civil society, and government. Your perspective of leadership and how to approach the modern sustainable development challenges we all face will be metamorphosized.
We can't fix COVID without cooperation. We can't fix peace and security without cooperation. We can't deal with climate change without cooperation.
When we presented at the end of the program, it really was a distillation of the diversity of the group.
The real powerful message for me was within that diversity, there was great strength.
The Great Commonwealth Leadership Experience is coming to Canada in 2023.
At the bottom of it all, and the whole point of everything we do is for the benefit of people.
It's really important the participants for the CSC 2023 come with the unique experience of their countries and share it.
Right now, each one of you thinks you know what leadership is. I would love you to go to that conference and expand your idea of what leadership is.
Your thought process will be challenged by equally bright leaders of tomorrow.
You as a group have to coalesce around what those common values are and what the solutions are and how you can help people.
You'll become a better global citizen, one who understands and can empathize with individuals and cultures globally.
Go to Canada. This is something incredibly unique and incredibly special.
Thank you, Ian, for taking the lead in organizing this for next year. May I just request Michael Wright, the president of the CSC Global Alumni, to propose a vote of thanks to Nandan.
Indeed, and thank you, Balaji. Nandan, what became, that was absolutely inspirational and incredibly insightful, that entire conversation. And there wasn't anything that was, anything that wasn't left on the table and that you weren't prepared to broach and address. So, and much of that, or in fact, most of it, were questions without notice. So thank you very much for adapting to that environment and for being so humble and honest in your responses. What was evident to me is that you have led an incredibly rich life, and that has been peppered by the theme of transformation, and that transformation is evident in the organisations that you've led, the individuals that you've impacted, in the communities, and indeed the nations. And it's very clear that you're as passionate about learning as you are about leading, which obviously keeps you fresh, and it's just so very important to see a leader of a global company like that in that space. In a world where tech is playing increasingly bigger roles in our lives and in the way that we do life generally, the need for human-centered leadership is absolute. It's absolute. And the thinking that sits behind that is critical. And it's really, really encouraging and comforting to think that there are people like you at the helm of some of those processes. So Nandan, thank you. You stated right at the beginning that there's only one scarce resource for you, and that's time. And that you were ruthless with your time. You weren't today. You were incredibly generous and gracious with your time. And on behalf of all that participated today, can we extend to you our grateful thanks for all of your time and your insight. And I'm sure that there's incredible wisdom in the words of the book there as well, and we can all continue to learn a little bit more from you through that. I'd like to acknowledge Peter, Balaji, and JT in particular for pulling all of this together. There's incredible work that goes into that, and it was a real coup to have you here, Nandan, and thank you for all that were involved in securing that.
Thank you.
So that's me done.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you so much, Michael. One last bit of 30 seconds before we let you go, Nandan, just to share with other colleagues and with you. We have another exciting online seminar as part of this Global Leadership Series, this time being hosted by UK CSC on 10th of March in London. We have Sir Alan Parker, who is the chair of the UK CSC, and he will host a conversation on an interesting topic. It's called Banking on a Green Economy, the Role of Financial Services in Achieving Sustainability. And we have Bill Winters, who's the CEO of Standard Chartered, Peter Flavel, who's the CEO of Foods Bank, and Jennifer Jordan, who's the Assistant Private Secretary for the Prince of Wales Sustainable Market Initiative. So it's again going to be a very engaging one. So, so we just hope that with leaders like you sharing your perspectives, as Michael said, with generosity of time and candor, I think this movement can only become stronger. So thank you once again. And for other ladies and gentlemen who joined today, please do register at the cscglobalalumni.com. Thank you, Nandan, for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.